Welcome to the deep dive. So for today's exploration, we tried something a bit different, maybe even a little wild. We took 12 biblical passages, literally picked at random. Different authors, times, genres, the whole spread. We were honestly expecting to find, maybe some interesting tidbits, but mostly just randomness, disconnection. But what we actually found was, well, the opposite. Intense coherence, a single unified design.
It was genuinely striking. These aren't just vaguely related texts. They clicked together like pieces of a puzzle, forming this one clear narrative arc, we've been calling it, the progressive revelation of the covenant through the promised seed and his kingdom. It's like watching a single story unfold over, well, millennia.
Okay, let's try and unpack that. Starting right at the beginning. Yeah, Genesis 22.17, the promise to Abraham. Everyone knows the part about descendants, like the stars in the sky, the sand on the seashore. That's the big collective promise, a nation.
Right, that's the collective aspect. But there's a crucial detail often missed, especially depending on the translation you're reading. More literal versions say the seed will possess the gate of his enemies. Did you catch that? His enemies. Singular.
Ah, okay. So it's not just the nation conquering generally. The promise includes the whole group, yes, but the ultimate victory, seizing the gate, which was like the seed of power back then.
Yeah.
That's down to one specific individual, the seed.
Exactly. A singular conquering figure who emerges from that collective posterity. It's a dual promise right from the start, and that focus gets sharper over time.
So where does it sharpen next?
Well, fast forward hundreds of years. We land in 2 Samuel 7.12. Now the promise gets tied directly to kingship, to governance. It's not just any descendant anymore. The seed is defined very physically. Someone coming out of thy bowels, meaning King David's direct line. And this descendant will establish his kingdom, singular again.
Okay, so we've gone from a vast nation to a specific descendant, now to a specific royal line and a kingdom. But then things take a turn, right? This kingdom, it's not what you'd expect.
Not at all. That's the paradoxical part the prophets reveal. Look at Ezekiel 17.22. The image is of this great tree, the lofty cedar representing the royal line, which seems totally cut down, destroyed. But then the prophet sees this tiny, tender one. The Hebrew word rak suggests something soft, vulnerable even, plucked from the very top of that ruined tree and planted on a high mountain.
Wow. So strength comes from weakness. The royal power emerges not from the established mighty parts, but from something seemingly insignificant.
Precisely. It flips the script on power. True royal authority isn't about existing strength. It comes through humility, maybe even suffering.
That's counterintuitive. We think kings, we think power, armies. So if this king's power isn't in military might initially, what does he conquer? You mentioned Luke 8.42 earlier, the story of Jairus' daughter. How does a miracle like that connect back to conquering the gate of enemies from Genesis?
It connects directly to the ultimate gate. Think about it. If the city gate was the seat of human power and judgment, what's the ultimate enemy? The final gate everyone must pass through.
Death. Sheol.
Exactly, death itself. So the seed's ultimate kingship, the proof of his kingdom's power, isn't shown by taking over, say, Jerusalem's gates. It's demonstrated by conquering the gate of death. When he raises that 12-year-old girl, he's essentially breaching the gates of Sheol. It proves his dominion is absolute, even over the grave.
Okay, that ties it together powerfully. Before we wrap up, though, you mentioned translation differences being key. We looked at the Masoretic text, the MT, and the Septuagint, the LXX Greek version. Why does that matter so much here?
It matters because the prophetic precision can hang on a single word choice. Let's revisit those key verses. Genesis 22.17. The MT uses shar, gate. That word specifically means the place of legal authority, of rule, perfect for a king. The LXX, the Greek translation, uses cities, paleis. It implies general conquest, yeah, but it loses that specific focus on the seat of power.
Makes sense. And Ezekiel, the tender one.
Same pattern. The MT's tender one, rak, fits perfectly with other prophecies about a messianic branch, like in Isaiah and Jeremiah. It connects the vulnerable shoot back to the Davidic line. The LXX translator seems to have struggled or had a different source text. Their reading there is something like hearts, which, well, it just completely breaks that link.
So the choice of ancient text really impacts how clearly you see the singular seed in his kingdom developing.
Often, yes. The MT in these specific instances seems to preserve a sharper prophetic focus on that central figure and his unique role.
Right. So pulling this all together for you listening, what we found in this random selection wasn't chaos. It was this incredibly intricate, internally consistent story unfolding across centuries. A unified plan focused on covenant, this promised seed, and eventual restoration.
And maybe the most fascinating part is how this multi-generational promise seems to be sustained within the texts themselves. It seems to hinge on a simple practice, actively remembering and recounting God's faithfulness in the past. You see the psalmist doing it, remembering ancient years. You see Moses retelling the Exodus story. Past actions fuel future hope.
So here's something to think about. How does actively remembering past events, whether in your own life or in history, shape how you see the future? What does it make you believe is possible? That's our deep dive for today.